Hi, welcome to another batch of classic bookmarks. A couple of years ago, we realized that we had been producing Bookmark for 30 years, some 425 episodes. To celebrate, we chose 15 shows to enhance and broadcast. The reception has been terrific. Viewers got a real kick out of seeing or re-seeing the conversations with Toni Morrison, Ray Bradbury, William Styron, Alexander McCall Smith, and many others. So, we have chosen another 15 shows from the archives. Interviews with George Saunders, Margaret Atwood, E.O. Wilson, Walter Mosley, Albert Murray, James Haskins, and 9 others. Of course, we are continuing to produce new shows with new writers and old writer friends. But in the meantime, we hope you enjoy watching these classics as much as we enjoyed making them. Walter Mosley is surely best known for his fiction, especially the E.Z. Rawlins mysteries, but Mosley also has a great deal to say in his nonfiction essays and memoir. Mosley writes for The Nation and is not at all shy in his criticism of American culture, values, and politics. I spoke with Walter Mosley at Writing Today, the annual conference for writers and readers at Birmingham Southern College. Mr. Mosley, thank you for coming back.
Well, thank you. It's been a long week, but
Not everybody comes back for more. When we were finishing the last program, we were talking about the very ending of, what is it, the 11th E.Z. Rawlins book?
the 11th E.Z. Rawlins book, yes.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle invented, loved, wrote a whole lot of Sherlock Holmes stories.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a moment when he got tired of writing Sherlock Holmes stories, and he had Moriarty throw Sherlock Holmes off a waterfall in Switzerland or Germany or wherever it was. The end of Blonde Faith is ambiguous, I think. Are you getting rid of E.Z.?
I am more courageous than Arthur Conan Doyle.
Yes.
Is my answer.
Will there be more answer? Or is
No, that's no more answer. That's it. E.Z. went off the cliff. That's it.
You know that some readers can easily imagine E.Z. waking up after a coma or waking up in intensive care.
And I encourage imagination in my readers.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to imagine it. That's okay with me.
E.Z. wakes up and he says, "It was a terrible dream. I dreamt I was in a car and I went off a cliff."
I'm not sure he's going to do that in my computer, but it may do it in somebody else's dream, and that's fine. I mean, it's good to have an ambiguous thing. You never, it's better to think that your friend might still be alive, But I'm not writing any more E.Z. Rawlins, I have no intention at this moment in time of writing any more E.Z. Rawlins books. I just don't have it. I mean, there's a lot more I want to write and a lot more I want to do. I think that there's over 3,000 pages of E.Z. Rawlins in first person. I think that's, quite a lot. Anybody who's upset can start from the beginning. They probably forgot everything anyway. So they could start over and it'd take them some years to get back to the 11th book. So that's okay.
You write very quickly.
I do.
In fact, I heard an anecdote. I think we established it may have been Brian Lamb, but I'm not certain, where you were only allowed to publish one E.Z. Rawlins book per year.
Well, the business model for publishing is that you write a book a year is the maximum. Now, I write about 3 or 4 books a year, and I publish 3 or 4 books a year. So I may be competing with myself. I understand that. But what can I do? I write, and I love writing. Writing is the center of my life. I know that if you want to get rich, you go into real estate, not into writing. And so, I write these books, and I'm very happy. But I can't write. If I'm in a series, I never write, and I can't write. Nobody will publish more than 1 book a year. That's okay.
Right. You've now written a book for people who also want to write a lot. This is the year you write your novel.
Yes, this year you write your novel.
I read this year you write your novel. I did not sit down immediately afterwards and spend the 2 hours a day.
Yeah.
You wrote the book in response to what?
Well, people always ask me, I want to write a novel. Can you give me some advice? And I always tell them, I said, well, if you gave me an hour, I could tell you everything I know. Because it's not all that much. I mean, there's how much could there be to it? There are certain things you do. There's metaphor, there's simile, there's plot, there's story, there's character and character development, there's dialogue, there's repetition. There's about, maybe 25 different things that you have to know. And there's one thing you have to do, and that's write every day. Now, once, but I need to explain all of those things. Mm-hmm. And so I never have enough time when somebody asks me, like in a situation like this, if you ask me right now, wouldn't have enough time. So I wrote the book. And so now, when people ask me, I say, well, I wrote a book about it. All you have to do is go, buy it. I make some money. You know how to write a novel.
Everybody wins.
Copacetic, yeah.
Yeah. The first page, sit down in the chair and write every day for 2 hours.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous, but what do you suppose the percentage of people who do that more than one day? I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it?
Well, the thing is that I don't write it in order to say you should do it. I write it to say, because there's a reason. The reason you write every day is because, in a way, writing is kind of like the model for psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis, you go every day to the therapist, lie down on the couch, and you get into your unconscious. The next day, because you've talked the day before and things are going on in your unconscious, you get deeper. The next day, deeper. The next day, deeper. Now, let's say you're going to go away on vacation for 2 weeks. You don't go to your therapist and say, well, listen, I'm going to come on Monday. We're going to talk for 14 hours. And then I'll come back in 2 weeks and we'll pick it up again. You're not going to get anywhere with that. It's not going to be helpful to you. If you write every day, you get deeper and deeper into your psyche. You get deeper and deeper into your story. A year from the first day you start writing, you'll be a different person. Your mind will work in different ways. It'll be restructured, actually. Right. You will have restructured your mind. Many people don't want to do this. They don't want to do it. That's fine. Don't do it. But really, most people can't expect to be a novelist if they can't do that. And so I put it out there in front of you. If you don't want to do it, that's not a bad thing. You don't want to be a novelist, that's cool. But you should at least know why, for the last 10 years you said you wanted to be a novelist, why it wasn't working.
How many hours a day do you write?
About 2 to 3 hours a day. Yeah.
Do you then spend time editing, revising?
No, that's everything. 2 to 3 hours a day.
How about reading?
I read. Whenever I can, I read books. I'm kind of a slow reader, love reading, but I read. But I never consider reading as part of writing. A lot of people say, well, you can't write if you don't read. I don't even know where they get that. And I think they make it up. Well, people kind of make up things, because they want to feel important or something. So I read Tolstoy. I read Isaac Babel. I read, Richard Wright. So, okay, fine, you read Richard Wright, but, I wrote this book. It's like, that's good. You read it, but, he wrote it, not you. You know what I mean? And it doesn't necessarily, it's like watching a movie and thinking you'd be a filmmaker. You watch all the movies you want, but sit down and say, well, how did they put this movie together? You have no idea. It's a different thing. It's fun to read. You learn to read. It grows your mind to read. But writing is a different exercise.
You know that if this particular exchange were broadcast to a giant auditorium full of MFA teachers, they'd faint, they'd die.
Well, yeah, I think that people in the university...
The article of faith is if you have to read in order to write.
People in the university have taken over literature, and they believe they understand what literature is. But literature is a living thing in everybody's life, every day. If you read street lit, this kind of street lit that they have now, that people write about, kind of hip hop generation and stuff. That's the same thing as somebody reading Othello. You're reading books about a life that you see that has meaning for you, that has moral value for you, that you see yourself reflected inside of it. Reading is like kind of a wonderful thing. And for people to say, well, this is better than that, it's just nonsense. But this is better than that. Because if you're human, you're subjective. If you can't read Shakespeare, Shakespeare's not better than something else. If you can't read, if you just look at it and say, I don't even get this, I can't read it, okay, well, that book doesn't exist for you. You might read another book that will be important for you, But, the university has co-opted literature, and I think we all suffer from it.
You are, in your own way, a brave writer. That is, you are willing to write all kinds of different things and take the consequences. I have a couple places I want to go with this. Mm-hmm. But first, sex. Easy Rawlins.
That's always a good place to go.
Easy Rawlins is very successful with women. Mm-hmm. and he has a number of sexual encounters, romantic encounters and sexual encounters, but they're not particularly explicit. But you have written a novel which moves right up to the edge of pornography, or is there no such thing?
If there was pornography, it would be there.
This is a sexistential novel.
Yeah, well, it's about a guy. I wrote a novel about a guy who has a girlfriend. He lives, downtown. She lives uptown. He has a girlfriend. He never goes to her house on a weekday, but he goes one day, and he comes in and he sees her. She doesn't see him, and she's having this really wild sexual experience, something that he's never had with her, with this guy, Johnny Fry. And he goes without her knowing that he's seen this, and it throws him into a tizzy, and it throws him into this whole journey of sexual revelation and awakening. Middle-aged guy. This to me, is kind of the way any existential novel works. Only, the basis of it is sexuality, and it's extraordinarily explicit. Extraordinarily. I mean, and it was just so much fun to write. People got so mad at me. Oh my God! I would read this thing. God, there was a woman lactating at one point, and a woman wrote, and she says, "That's just laughable." I'm saying, what's laughable about lactating? I don't understand. It's not funny, But it's the book is.
Yeah, it is.
You're laughing, but it's not funny. The thing is that it was I just think that sex is a part of all of our lives, and that people write novels, in the mystery genre about in great detail about somebody being their stomach being cut open, their intestines falling out, blood all over the place, eating flesh, and nobody calls that pornographic. But you're right about sex, which is kind of a normal thing that we all do. We don't cut people open necessarily, but we have sex with them. And that's pornographic. It was wild, But it was very enjoyable for me to write. And I was happy to get there,
Well,
happy to get there.
What I'm really meaning in part is that there are writers who are very careful of their readership.
Yeah,
they're very careful not to offend their readership this way or that way. And the other way is politically, not just sexually, but politically. But you're utterly unrestrained in your political writing.
Yeah.
I'd like to spend a moment with the memoir Towards World Peace, and just give you an opportunity. I mean, here you are. Most writers would not get up and express their economic, global, political positions. Norman Mailer would have, did, and you do.
It's an amazing thing, I mean, it's like no newspaper or magazine, with very few exceptions, wants anybody to mention capitalism, because that reminds people of communism, and that's bad. It's like that rhymes with T, which means with P, which or something stands for pool. And it's like, but I write about capitalism. I'm outside of my window in New York. I was looking out my window as the planes crashed in the World Trade Center. I saw it happen. I was deeply affected by it. My city was deeply affected and wounded by it. And then I wrote a book called What Next? A memoir toward world peace with Black Classic Press and Paul Coates, the publisher, because it was a critique of America's so-called war on terrorism. Because, I don't mind a war on terrorism. I said, if you want to kill all the terrorists, fine. You say, okay, we decide we're going to go out and kill all the terrorists. I know that a lot of people in the Pentagon are going to get killed because there are terrorists inside and outside of America. There are pro-American terrorists and anti-American terrorists. I say, if you just want to start killing them, which I don't agree with, but it's like I'm not saying that we should, but if you want to start killing them, you got to kill all of them if you're going to make sense. You can't just say, I'm going to kill the ones I don't like, but the terrorists I do like, I'm going to leave them alive. And so, I mean, that's kind of crazy. I wrote the book. It came out the day that we invaded Iraq, which is, it was good because I was on tour and I don't like crowded planes. There was nobody in the planes. I was the only person in the airplanes flying around the country giving this talk. I felt that it was really important to speak out against something that I knew then and now everybody knows was wrong, that we shouldn't wage this war against a people in a lopsided way. If we're going to fight terrorism and the causes of terrorism, we have to do it completely, not just partially. And it's very important that somebody speak out, from kind of a pedestrian view of America, and not let people like, Colin Powell and Dick Cheney and all these other people kind of run us down avenues into, some very suicidal type stances, and also murderous stances. I mean, We've killed a lot of people. And, you know, we're in a war right now. And I keep on saying, well, you know, we're winning the war. And I said, well, okay, that's fine. I said, but who are we winning it against? I said, who's my enemy? You know, I mean, I thought you said they were my allies over in Iraq. I said, well, they are. So who are we killing? I said, well, the enemy. It's crazy.
How about the moving just off of the military for a moment to the sort of globally economic? I mean, you have a good deal to say about international corporations, globalization, the whole world of,
well, you know,
of
international
economic imperialism, if you like.
Well, you know, there's a few. I love asking people questions in America, which I know they're going to give me an answer that I think is false. Like for instance, I say, "What class are you?" to most audiences, like the people sitting here today, and almost every person, I said, "Don't answer, just think," you know. And at the end, I said, "Well, you know, what did you think?" Almost everybody said they're in the middle class. It's not true. Everybody's in the working class. Almost everybody's in the working class. The middle class is this: if you lose your job, and for the next year, you can live without your lifestyle changing at all. Your kids are in the same schools, you go to the same restaurants, you give to the same charities, you live in the same house. Well, okay, that's a middle class person. A year can go by and your life stays the same. Working class person, 2 weeks go by and your life changes. All of a sudden, you're eating at McDonald's. All of a sudden, your kids are going to community college. All of a sudden, you're living in a one-room house instead of an 8-room house. This is what the working class, you know, suffers under. That, you know, and that's a terrible thing. I ask people, I say, well, what kind of government do we live in America? And they say, democracy. I say, no, that's not true. We live in an oligarchy. Our Congress is controlled almost completely by the 40,000 lobbyists who represent about 500 international corporations. Those are the people who run our lives. Our lives aren't run by our vote. We vote for somebody and we don't talk to them again for 2 years, 4 years, 6 years. Those people are talking to lobbyists every single day. And when they quit, they go to work for those lobbyists, get $1 million jobs, you know, representing pharmaceutical companies or, big store chains, that kind of stuff.
You've been doing a lot of writing for The Nation.
Yeah, you know, I kept on sending my op-ed pieces to the New Yorker, to the New York Times, and to, you know, the LA Times and a few other newspapers, and they kept sending them back. And finally, one day, one of the newspapers said, we'd be happy to sit down and talk to you and explain to you how to write your opinion. Oh. And I went, wow. Oh. I said, damn, man, you think you've written as many books as me? And they go, well, you know, but you see, we have a very kind of, you know, managed kind of opinion page. And so I talked to Katrina Vanden Heuvel, the publisher of The Nation.
Right.
And she said, Walter, let me see your work. And I said, well, you know, Katrina, nobody wants to publish it. She said, well, let me take a look. And so The Nation wants to publish me. I don't know what that says about me or The Nation. But, you know, but it's the thing is that, you know, that I want to, as a writer of fiction or as a writer of nonfiction, it seems to me the only onus on you is to tell the truth in the terms of what you're writing. If it's fiction, it's in terms of the character. Be true to those characters. If it's nonfiction, you have to say what you believe. If you, for instance, as you're pointing out, believe that capitalism and democracy have nothing to do with each other, that a person in capitalism, they believe in dictatorships because that's where the most profit lay, because you can control labor. Well, then you have to say that. But, you know, and if people are going to, you know, be silly and think, well, you want to be a communist. No, I'm just telling you that capitalism is not your father, you know. And if people don't want to understand that, well, you know.
What the writers who may very well share this opinion, these opinions with you,
yeah,
fiction writers, novelists, but who would not express them.
Yeah.
They would not express them in print, and they would not express them on television.
Yeah.
And the worry would be that there would be repercussions, that they would lose readership, that they would lose publishers, that they would lose, in a sense, prestige.
Money. Lose money.
Money, all right, to get right to it.
Excuse me.
Well, have there been any effects? I mean, when you write an editorial or an opinion piece in The Nation, or your What Next, which is, you know, pretty strident, does it have any effect on Easy Rawlins, or does nobody care?
All you have to do is turn that question on its head, and you have an answer. Because the one answer is this: I don't know, to answer your question. But if I turned it on its head, if every writer in America spoke out telling what they knew was the truth, every novel writer, every nonfiction writer, every journalist, then our country would be a beautiful, glorious country. And instead, we're in the toilet.
I got an email recently asking me to ask you basically this question. I may phrase it slightly differently, and that is, do you really intend to have an effect on American society, on American culture, that you, Walter Mosley, are, by God, going to make a difference in the United States, that you're not writing for entertainment, that you're writing to change American culture?
I'm writing to express how I see America. So when Easy Rawlins drives to the restaurant and he walks in and the guard at the bottom stops him, and then the woman at the front desk stops him,
Yes.
and then the guy who owns the restaurant says, "Hey, I want him here," and then he goes away, and he comes back that night and the police stop him, and a new guard downstairs stop him, and another woman upstairs stop him, and then the manager has to go out again and bring him to a seat. That's just the truth. That's just the truth. Okay. That's how easy it goes through. He has to go through 6 demons in order to sit down and order a dinner that he's paying for.
Yeah.
You know, that people are making money off of. You know, and that's what I'm writing. So I'm trying to tell the truth. But people interpret truth in different ways. If it impacts people, if it helps people, that's great. But you know, I don't see myself as a savior. I don't see myself. I see myself as a greater part of a nation of possibilities. If everyone speaks the way that according to their heart and the way they see the world, then it'll be a better world. If it's just me, no, it's not going to be a better world. It'll just be, it's a possibility.
Well, I'm thinking in terms of, say, the Hollywood actors who insist, quite, I guess rightly, that they have a perfect right to stand up and express their political opinion, whether it's Moses or Baez. And every writer not only has the right to do it, but the means to do it. That is, you have
well, you know, the
interesting
thing is this, is that you can talk about people who are in kind of the upper echelons of their field, like, you know, famous actors or important writers or, you know, some kind of news commentators, whatever. But the interesting thing is that every person in America has the right to speak the truth. And the experts in America are the people who lie. So you have Colin Powell sitting in front of Americans, pointing at yellow dots in the desert, saying, these are weapons of mass destruction, when he knew that they might be beer kegs. They could be soft serve ice cream canisters. They could have been anything. He had to know. He's an expert. I'm not an expert. I don't have a battery of PhDs who I can respond to and say, well, listen, they say that this could be quasi-quasi gas. Do you think that that's the only thing it beats? Well, yeah, either that or maybe Foster's Brew. One of the two. I don't know which. Now, he knew better. He knows better than I do. He knows better than most of the people in this audience, but it doesn't matter because he's going to lie because he's an expert, and experts get jobs and get paid to make sure that their masters get the right thing done. So I want a war. You're going to call this weapons of mass destruction. No trouble, boss. I'm going to do that. Right? Okay, fine. So the thing is that even if you're wrong, to speak out is a beautiful thing. You say, I might be wrong. I don't know about this thing in Iraq, but I do know that I don't want any innocent children to die. And I want every day for you to make a report to tell me that no innocent children died. If we could put that on America, it doesn't matter if we don't understand why there's a war. It doesn't understand if we don't understand yellow dots in the desert. It matters that we, as everyday citizens in the United States, know what's right. Innocent children shouldn't be dying.
Now that you may or may not have killed off Easy Rawlins.
Yes.
And I, for one, don't believe it, but we'll see.
You don't believe it if I may or may not have done it?
No, I believe you haven't done it.
Oh, okay.
But we'll see. This gives you a lot of free time. And we don't have a lot of time. We have a minute and a half.
Okay.
What are the subject areas? You don't have to tell me precisely which book you're going to write next and after that, but what are the areas in American society? What are the areas that you are going to be concerned with over the next couple of years?
Well, there's 3 different answers. First, I'm going to write 2 books that are philosophical about kind of everyday Americans and their philosophy, their philosophic take on America. Tempest Tales and The Further Socrates Foreglow Stories, which is The Right and the Stake. So those are 2 things. Then I'm going to write about a new black detective in New York, contemporary, who does more wrong than he does right, or has done more wrong than he does right, and is trying to redeem himself. And finally, just the thing is, I'm writing another story about a 96-year-old black man who's losing his mind to dementia, but he's trying to keep his mind together just long enough to do something right. This is because I'm writing about black male heroes, and because it's a very important thing. Nobody writes about black male heroes in America, or very few people. Mm-hmm. And black male heroes, they're very important, and they're also very frightening, because everybody knows what's happened to the black man in America, and people are afraid. So, well, if he's a hero, who is he fighting against? And this is a worrisome thing in America, but it's also very important.
I'm looking forward to it. Ordinarily, I like to close a program by saying, after you've published your next book, I'll read it and we'll sit down and talk again. In your case, in a year or two from now, after you've published your next 5 or 6 books,
that's right,
I hope that you and I can sit down and have another conversation. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Me too. Thanks a lot.